At the moment when Israel and the U.S. actually attacked, and not just 3 sites where nuclear weapons were being produced, but 1,000 targets, I am not exaggerating, 1,000 military and political targets have been attacked so far, including the elimination of 40 top commanders of the Army, Navy, and the Revolutionary Guard Corps. And they even sent the main mullah to the Virgins. So those who survived really wanted to keep staying alive. By the way, I'll tell you some amazing details about Ricaros's attack, just incredible, a bit later.
We are definitely interested in de-escalation. We don't want war. We don't want escalation in our region. We are ready for de-escalation, but aggression must be stopped first.
So, well, we are ready for negotiations, which they just demonstratively walked out of, even slamming the door. But they want us, well, Israel or the U.S., to stop bombing them, and then they will be ready to resume negotiations. Interesting, right? They probably think we're fools. Probably, well, so to speak, the only reason they came out, with proposals, right? It's the bombings. And if we stop them, they'll find 1,001 reasons to drag things out again. Don't miss it. Trump's speech about the fate of Iran is coming up soon. The only way to negotiate with the current, at least, leadership of Iran is to bomb them nonstop. Not a single second of respite. Leveling everything they have that can shoot, explode, fly, crawl, or jump. Only then, and only then. Well, maybe then it will be possible to negotiate with them about something, but that's still up in the air. Because most likely, even after reaching an agreement, they will stall for time, come up with all sorts of excuses, and nitpick over every little detail, hoping that Allah might come and help them. But with the Americans, and especially with the Israelis, Allah doesn't work. He just doesn't work.
Early this morning, we watched a video from the Israel Defense Forces showing how they attacked Iranian ballistic missile launch positions in the west of the country. These are the missile launchers they use to strike central Israel. They are mostly protected and sometimes they are brought out from underground. The Israelis used drones along the Persian Gulf coast to monitor the situation in the coming days. And they want to strike immediately as soon as they see a missile or a launcher brought above ground. And that's exactly what they did. And at this very hour, it has suppressed most of the incoming fire. According to Israeli officials, dozens of Iranian missiles rained down on cities today, but that's much less than what we saw last summer when the war began.
That's what the Israelis are saying. In other words, the retaliatory strike against Iran for the most part also failed. Although, unfortunately, several people in Israel and among the Americans were killed.
I truly believe that this is sufficient evidence that Iran's ability to wage war is largely collapsing. Basically, you're talking about a paper tiger here, because how is it that at this very moment, right, this is arguably the biggest crisis and the biggest threat that Iran as a government has faced in its entire history, right? Right now, America is openly stating, we want to change the regime in your country. And for some reason, you even have fewer missiles than during the 12-day war when the threat wasn't as strong. It seems this suggests that Iran doesn't have any missiles, right? They're completely bankrupt. Their economy and their country are just falling apart entirely because they've spent so much money and invested so many resources over the years in waging regional wars and terrorism. And all of that has completely collapsed and fallen apart, and now they have very few options left for self-defense, right?
The people hate them. Their own people hate them. Their neighbors can't stand them. The Iranian leadership, are known as liars, cheaters, completely lacking in morals, and on top of that, hypocrites. In this respect, they closely resemble the leaders of the Democratic Party of the USA. The only difference is that Iranians don't think that turning men into women and women into men is a good thing. Other than that, it's absolutely the same. By the end of the video, you'll learn some amazing things about Israel and India. Yes, I'm not joking. So who is bombing Iran? Israel has bombed 1,000 targets, as I already mentioned. Out of those, as reported by satellite observers, 500 were completely destroyed. They said half I just figured that's half, so it should be about 1,500. What are these targets? So the headquarters and command posts of the IRGC, the central, regional, and local ones, the headquarters of the aerospace forces, also of the IRGC. So it turns out there were aerospace forces and missile launchers. What was actually one of the most important things: ballistic missile positions, fortified missile silos, missile and ammunition depots. By the way, also the means. The missiles destroyed were newly delivered Chinese missiles, which were supposedly meant to be used at sea against our ships. Air defense systems and radars. Russia is going crazy over this. Not a single system supplied to Russia worked. Not a single one. There you go. All the positions, what's it called? S-300, I think that's what it's called, right? And integrated air defense systems. The S-300 integrated air defense systems, which were covering nuclear and missile sites, didn't even blink. How do they make them? Are they making them with their left foot or something? And they're exploding one after another. So basically, Moscow's defense might as well just shut down and go take inventory. So ships, Iranian Navy ships, submarine bases, coastal complexes, warehouses of Chinese, anti-ship missiles. Well, and military communication nodes, of course, command centers, staff facilities that Iran considered secret. They didn't tell anyone about this. Not even all their own people knew. Well, among the outsiders who did know, there were a few people from Mossad. So Israel had a map, with the exact locations of more than 1,000 sites related to defense and the missile corps, this very one, supporting Iran. The task of the IDF: to decapitate the resistance, to sever communications, to destroy the launchers in order to stop the attacks on Israel and its allies, to destroy the fleet and their ability to block the Hormuz and oil shipping. This bombing, all these raids and explosions by themselves cannot guarantee a regime change, but it's interesting to note that both Trump and Netanyahu have recently started, just 2 days ago in fact, to talk in their rhetoric about helping some mythical security bloc for now. Help to overthrow the regime. Netanyahu has already promised twice not to abandon someone, so here it is. We won't leave halfway. This suggests that Israel and the U.S. are trying to form a core group for regime takeover, either in the army or in the Revolutionary Guard Corps. After bombing and destroying the regime supporters' ability to resist, naturally, rockets are still flying toward Israel, Bahrain, the Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. The ruler of Saudi Arabia ordered his air force, together with Israel and America, to defend the skies from drone missiles coming from Iraq. Just a little more and we'll talk about Tucker, ladies and gentlemen, and Megyn Kelly, by the way, yes. Both of them did interviews. Incredible and, in my view, successful interviews with Putin.
President Trump announced today, or rather on Sunday afternoon, that the Iranian Navy was completely defeated, the Iranian fleet was completely destroyed. This is extremely important news, and I will definitely explain why that is. But first of all, let's turn to Trump's official statement. I have just been informed that we have destroyed and sunk 9 Iranian warships, some of them relatively large and important. We are going after the rest. Soon they will be resting at the bottom of the sea. Also,
the U.S. has decided not to give Iran a chance to close the Hormuz. Of course, Iran has missiles that can be used to strike oil tankers, but that means whoever gave the order will definitely be found and executed. No options. If he's lucky, he'll be executed by firing squad, but they may even tear him apart. It's one thing to block movement with a fleet, along with 2 Russian and 2 Chinese ships, and quite another to blow up a tanker in the strait, a tanker full of oil.
I'll tell you, there are also unconfirmed reports that an Iranian submarine was torpedoed at some point late yesterday by an American submarine.
I think Iranian submarines were also built in Russia. Let's talk about Russia. Hold on a bit, we'll talk about Russia. What's funny is that Iranians, U.S. citizens who ended up joining the Democratic Party of America, are just shocked by their party. Just shocked. The main presidential candidate in 1928 is Kamala. My God, they have no one to put forward. About her, excuse me, I don't want to say anything inappropriate. Well, I understand what happened with Biden, but now they're doing this of their own free will. Well, okay, let's forget it, forget it, forget it. All the others, by the way, are neither better nor worse, so that means they betrayed. For their own selfish interests. Those very people they just said were their best friends, and that they would help them with all their might. I mean the Iranians who defected here to the United States of America, fleeing from the Ayatollahs.
I am absolutely against this unnecessary war, and everyone should
be against a war with the Ayatollahs. This infuriated the Iranians who had fled from those very Ayatollahs to the U.S.
Subtitles Dima Torzak. I am a Democrat myself. I have always been a committed Democrat. I am incredibly disappointed with my party. I don't see myself in them at this very moment.
Yet another layer of support for the Democrats is falling away. And here is Chuck Schumer, the leader of the Democrats in the Senate, who doesn't know how to get out of this situation.
When I spoke with Marco Rubio, I begged him to be honest with Congress and the American people about the goals of these strikes and what comes next. All right? Iran must never be allowed to obtain nuclear weapons, but the American people do not want another endless and costly war in the Middle East when there are so many problems at home. I think this guy actually supported a lot of endless and costly wars in the Middle East. I don't see any evidence yet that this will be endless and costly, but of course, Chuck Schumer still holds such a mainstream political position in Washington that they don't want Iran to have nuclear weapons. Okay, then what is his criticism? He claims this administration hasn't shared key details about the threat's scale and urgency with Congress and the public, maybe because there's a war happening now. Let's just leak all our national security information. But that's the dumbest part. All right? Countering Iran's malicious regional activities, its nuclear ambitions, and its brutal oppression of the Iranian people, which Chuck Schumer is trying to acknowledge, requires American strength, determination, regional coordination, and strategic clarity. Unfortunately, President Trump's erratic cycles of outbursts and the risk of escalating the conflict are not a viable strategy.
So, did you understand anything? So Iran is bad. Well, that's Solovsky's Iran. That's bad. We have to fight them. Before that, he said many times that under no circumstances should we allow them to get a nuclear bomb. We must do everything possible, including invasion, war, whatever it takes, right? So now we have to fight them and not let them create a nuclear bomb. But because it's not Obama doing this, it's Trump. Schumer says, I'm strongly against any actions against the regime. Wow. Here's another idea from a Democrat. It was voiced by Senator Mark Warren.
Ironically, Dana, if the president had decided to take one of these actions back in early January, when the Iranian people were out on the streets, numbering in the millions, one could argue that it might have pushed the regime toward dramatic changes. He couldn't make that decision because the aircraft carrier that was supposed to help with this operation was off the coast of Venezuela at that time. And our allies in the region, particularly in Europe, who could have helped us make this decision in January, were very focused on the president's crazy idea about Greenland.
Soon you will hear Trump's speech about the fate of Iran. Don't miss it. So it's really bad that Trump is attacking because he should have done it earlier, instead of spreading himself thin over Venezuela and Greenland, and he should have bombed more aggressively. And Mark is not an idiot. It's just that the Democratic Party's position is idiotic.
What? That's actually this guy's argument. The very moment protests broke out in Iran, we should have struck immediately. How dare Trump wait and coordinate everything? To which I'll say, first of all, that's the Democrats' strategy. Let's just launch massive airstrikes on a crowd of protesters, right? I'm sure nothing will happen if the whole country takes to the streets and then we just start dropping a bunch of bombs. And the Democrats, of course, won't accuse us of killing a bunch of protesters, or of recklessly starting a military conflict without first trying to find a diplomatic solution, which brings me to my second point. Wasn't your party's leadership angry at Trump for refusing diplomacy? But what has he been doing for the last 2 months? Trying to find a diplomatic solution to the problem? Now the Democrats claim that we should have just gone and bombed immediately. Yes.
That's exactly what they're saying. There was no need to waste time on diplomacy, and as soon as you saw demonstrations earlier, you should have immediately gone and bombed without any preparation. In my opinion, that's a brilliant suggestion. Just brilliant. Senator Yordner, I always thought you were a little smarter. And thank God those jerks aren't in power. When there were protests under Obama, they all just sat there and kept quiet. It's completely unclear what they're unhappy about. So you say that war is very bad because it was supposed to start 2 months earlier. And then it would have been good. Ow. Where did your mind go? Did it hide behind your reason or something? And the funniest thing, of course, is Chuck again.
When it comes to negotiations with the terrorist government of Iran, Trump is extremely inconsistent. One day he sounds tough, and the next day he backs away from his words. And now, completely out of the blue, we find out that Witkoff and Rubio are holding secret talks about a side deal with Iran. What nonsense is this? They'll speak tough in public and then make a deal behind the scenes so Iran gets away with everything? This is outrageous. We need to expose this backroom deal. Any such deal must be presented to Congress, and most importantly to the American people. If that's the case and Trump is already giving in, the American public needs to know about it. No backroom deals.
What secret agreement? What is he talking about? I think he just wants to scare people without actually saying anything. Then he can say, "What did I say? I didn't say anything like that." Yes, we'll talk about the mayor of New York in a moment, and then about Tucker. Oh, that's just a gold mine. What does that mean? She's sweet. Mom, yes, they are. Here's what he wrote.
The president has pretty much unilateral power to act against terrorists without Congress's approval after September 11, right? So that's the point. People say, oh, the president can't use the military at all without Congress. That's not true. He can use it in a number of limited cases. Airstrikes are quite common, especially if they're against recognized terrorist groups. That's federal law, right? So you're going to call the Iranians a terrorist government while you criticize Trump for not attacking, and then when Trump does it, what will you say? Oh, that was a sovereign country. You can't bomb a sovereign country without first getting approval from Congress. That's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. But at the same time, let's listen to what Zoran Mamdani had to say about this. Because, well, you can be sure that he's watching the situation very closely, right? That's what the Democrats do. They watch the situation. They want everyone to know that they're watching the situation. Anyway, here's what he said. Today's military strikes on Iran, carried out by the United States and Israel, mark a catastrophic escalation in an illegal war of aggression. The bombing of cities, the killing of civilians, the opening of a new theater of war. As far as I remember, I think it's the other side that's killing civilians, but in any case, Americans don't want this. They don't want a new war for regime change. They want relief from the affordability crisis. They want peace. He goes on, I'm focused on making sure every New Yorker is safe. Yes, preventive measures, all of that. But then he says, furthermore, I want to address the Iranian residents of New York directly. You are an integral part of this city. You are our neighbors, small business owners, students, artists, and so on. You will be safe here.
Mamdani seems to think that Iranians adore mullahs and agitators too. They hate Trump because he attacked their beloved homeland. That's who they are. Iranians in exile. And well, they're just terribly upset. The Iranians haven't had greater joy than this in a long time. Dark forces have taken over their country, and maybe now they will be destroyed and swept away by the USA. There are those who think differently, and one of them is Tucker Carlson. On the Megyn Kelly show, they talked.
Because that's what the president just told us. I covered this in detail back in July. Didn't you want him to fly to Iran with those bombs? We did that in July. I didn't mind. I was like, okay, fine, let's destroy a military facility or their nuclear facility. And then when they said they destroyed it, I didn't know. I saw conflicting reports, but the president said we did it. And here we are, 6 months later, saying we have to go back to stop the nuclear program, the one we supposedly bombed and destroyed. A couple of months ago, I watched a debate on Piers Morgan today with 2 pro-Israel and 2 anti and pro. The Israeli woman said, yes, Israel is winning. This is definitely good for Israel. Of course we want this. I accept it. I heard you say on your show, great, no problem, but what do we get out of this? Let them want this and speak out, but what do we get? Why is President Trump considering this?
I don't think the president wants to do this. I think he's been very clear about it. I spoke with him the other day, and he didn't tell me anything he hasn't said publicly, always. In this sense, Trump is surprisingly transparent. I've talked to him a lot, and he never says anything he wouldn't say in the middle of a speech. There is no hidden agenda that I have noticed. And he said, I don't want this, I want diplomacy, I don't want war, I spoke out against starting the war, I don't want them to have weapons. What he says in public and in private, on the phone, in person, and on stage, and that's why I believe him. Iran does not have nuclear weapons. It does not have the capability to obtain nuclear weapons if it had nuclear weapons against the US. Mark Levin said 3 days ago on his podcast that they have ICBMs with nuclear warheads. That's a lie. He should be removed from his position for saying that because it's a lie, and he knows it himself. This is not about defending the United States. Among many things, not only is this true, but these are incredibly high stakes. I mean, I could talk for hours about what could go wrong in this war. If it starts, I think it's most likely to happen, but it's not guaranteed. The president decides, and he hasn't made that decision yet, but all other things being equal, it will happen, and you will see massive upheaval in the U.S. economy. You could see the deaths of many Americans in the region, tens of thousands, both military and civilian. And you could see some of our closest allies in the world. The Gulf states, which supply energy to global civilization, would be paralyzed by this. And then you would see massive refugee crises around the world. The plan is to remove Iran's leadership, but there's no plan for what follows.
What Megan and others are saying is that the only one who benefits from a war with Iran is Israel, and that there is no benefit for the U.S., only severe consequences, that Iran does not have and will not have a nuclear bomb anytime soon, and that President Trump did not want to go to war, but he was forced to. All of these are interesting arguments, of course, but I wouldn't take them as the ultimate truth. And if Trump really didn't want to go to war with Iran, then the U.S. wouldn't have gone to that war. Soon you will hear Trump's speech about the fate of Iran. Don't miss it. There is a benefit to destroying an aggressive Iran for the chances of the U.S. and the whole world, but especially for the U.S. So the serious consequences that he says should be weighed against the benefit, not considered on their own. IG, how does he know that Iran won't have a nuclear bomb anytime soon? And who told him that? Naturally, it was an Iranian diplomat, in secret. I think my opinion is the following. By the way, I'm against 99% of the wars that the U.S. has participated in from 1945 up to now. But if your neighbor says every day that he's saving money to buy a gun, and as soon as he finally buys it, he'll kill all your children. If he doesn't stop and has already killed, by the way, a dozen other people's children, then when he says that he's already bought the gun and is now saving up for bullets, you have 3 options, 3 courses of action. First, run without looking back. Second, ignore it. Maybe you'll get lucky and he won't kill, maybe, or hit him preemptively with a shaft. By the way, personally, I would prefer in this situation, if I could, to use the shaft. Why choose the other 2 options? Yes, calling the police won't work. They stopped intervening a long time ago. But here's how you need to look at it.
We're looking at this from the wrong angle. This isn't about protecting the US, obviously, and it's not even about protecting Israel. If you're Israel and your main goal is not to be attacked and to keep your cities safe, the last thing you would do is try to provoke Iran into launching ballistic missiles at your country. You would never do that. No, it's about crushing any resistance to Israel's regional hegemony
and also an anti-Semite, so Israel's hegemony, that's what he calls hegemony. It's so strange to hear that. What facts does Taker have? Examples from Israel's actions that show it's seeking hegemony over the region. The main task of the Jewish state is to survive within the borders that the League of Nations outlined for it back in 1922 or 1923, up to 9,900. Naturally, this coincides with biblical or historical Israel. Israel has never wanted anything more from anyone, and this is proven by tons of actions. Making speeches is not about advancing anywhere beyond the borders of this specific historical Israel. And hegemony in the region, does that mean over Turkey or over Egypt or over the Sunnis, of whom there are 1 to 1.2 billion with the help of India? As you will find out now, yes, with the help of NT.
Israel believes, as the only nuclear power in the Middle East, that it should control the region. And by the way, I'm not attacking them. Every nuclear power feels this way. We feel this way. Whatever happens in South America, we have the right to intervene because we're the big dog. They feel the same way.
That's a blatant and baseless lie, both about America and about Israel.
And what's standing in their way? First and foremost, it's Iran, as well as Turkey, and then the 6 monarchies of the Persian Gulf that produce energy, mainly Qatar. Because they are disobedient, they don't follow Israel's example on many different issues. This war involves the U.S., which often tells Israel what it can or can't do. For example, Trump said Israel couldn't seize the entire West Bank or expel all the Christians. The U.S. is a limitation for Israel, so they want the U.S. to leave.
To expel the Christian population, that's it. He can't be in this kind. He can't be in this kind. He's a jury.
Это евреи.
And they are trying to expel or destroy them. Near Okranelsk, what is he?
In subtitles Dimatorzok region. Why not them? And of course, they turn to India. Israel decided it needs a superpower to exist. It's only 9 million people. It's a very small country. So they need to be allied with a major nuclear power. They have to. Otherwise, they won't survive, and they chose India. Prime Minister Modi was in the Knesset yesterday and met with Netanyahu, and that's the plan. Israel is shifting its focus from the US to India. And I don't think anyone is even pretending that this isn't happening, because support for Israel in the United States is declining. So this is the last opportunity. Subtitles created by Dima Torzok, you know.
It's not even a lie. This is the ravings of a madman. Throw out the USA, replace the USA with India, expand the borders. He doesn't even understand the concept of a Jewish state where the majority should be Jews in the country. We can't dilute them, 5 million Jews and 25 million of someone else, because in the end it will all be the same again. What happened for 2,000 years straight? Jews were persecuted. Jews, when they were minorities, they were always and everywhere minorities. So either he's a blatant anti-Semite who can't accept facts as the basis for reasoning because of his hatred, or he's very well paid, and he convinced himself that he's not doing it for money but fighting for justice.
Through the Levant through Lebanon into Syria, they're already seizing territories there and in Lebanon as well, and possibly even expanding their holdings further north from there. But Israel is striving to become physically larger. Every country does that. We do too.
Nothing about the Jews, about our psychology, about our dream of next year in Jerusalem, 2,000 years in a row with the dream of living at home, which means among Jews. Not just on our own land, but among Jews. So no one else would be there. Well, maybe just a few, right? But mainly so that there would be Jews, so that everything wouldn't be the same as before. Well, all right, I think we don't need any more than that. Otherwise, you'll throw up. I actually liked him when he was on Fox for the first 3 or 4 months, maybe longer, I don't remember exactly, when he had editors, producers working with him, proofreaders, company events. There was some kind of policy there, but now it seems like he's lost his mind or something. Or maybe it's just about the money. His strange love for Putin, right? His hatred for Ukraine, for Jews, for Israel. All of this is incredibly strange. And I really don't like that he's close to the vice president, Vance, who has already repeated a couple of things that Per Tucker said. Exactly, Per. Recently, Tucker stated that Jews consider themselves the superior race and that everyone else is subhuman. He constantly talks about the special privileges of Jews. We had so many privileges. And we have a lot of privileges now too, right? And about the all-powerful influence of Jews. Well, just since the times of the Zionist sages, right? Maybe even earlier, it serves as a basis for pogroms and anti-Semitism. Taker believes that today's Jews have no right to the land of Abraham, and so it seems that he himself shares these anti-Semitic beliefs, or he's playing to a certain audience, which, by the way, is no better and maybe even worse than being an anti-Semite. Carlson lives off attention and scandal, and the more he shocks with his topics and statements, the more noise, views, and accordingly loyalty from the radical audience he gets. I don't want to end on anti-Semitism, so I'll say this. There are 30 million evangelical Christians living in the U.S., and they are Israel's best friends in the whole world. And Jacoby, well, that very Jacoby, you know him, right? The one who tried to become president, well, ran for president. Now he is the U.S. ambassador to Israel. One of them, thank God, there are more of them than there are followers of Tucker Carlson. That's all, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time.
Over the past 36 hours, the United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury. One of the largest, most complex, and most devastating military operations the world has ever seen. No one has ever seen anything like it. We have struck hundreds of targets on Iranian territory, including corps facilities, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and Iranian air defense systems. It was just announced that we destroyed 9 ships as well as their naval base, and all of this happened in just a matter of minutes. The former supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei, has passed away. This vile and treacherous man has the blood of hundreds, even thousands of Americans on his hands, and he is responsible for the slaughter of countless thousands of innocent people in many countries. Last night, voices of Iranians celebrating and rejoicing in the streets could be heard all across Iran when his death was announced. All the military command has also disappeared, and many of them want to surrender to save their lives. They want immunity. They want it. They're calling in huge numbers. The fighting is continuing at full strength, and it will continue until all our objectives are achieved. We have very serious tasks ahead. They could have done something 2 weeks ago, but they just couldn't do it. Earlier today, CENTCOM reported the news that 3 American servicemen were killed in action. As one people, we mourn all true Americans, American patriots who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. And even as we continue this righteous mission for which they gave their lives, we pray for the full and speedy recovery of all the wounded, and we express our boundless love and eternal gratitude to the families of all the fallen heroes. And unfortunately, there will likely be more. Before this is over, that's just how it is, and there will probably be more. But we will do absolutely everything possible to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. However, America will avenge their deaths and deliver the most devastating and ruthless blow to those terrorists who have waged war against, essentially, all of civilization. They have declared a real war against human civilization itself. Our determination, like Israel's determination, has never been stronger. America is now once again the richest and most powerful nation in the world, and by a wide margin. But the only reason we enjoy the quality of life we have, as well as freedom and security, is because we have accomplished what others could not. But it's thanks to the warriors who are willing to sacrifice their lives to fight our enemies. And they fight better than anyone else. The Iranian regime, armed with long-range missiles and nuclear weapons, will be a counterpart, a deadly threat to every American. We cannot allow a country that raises terrorist armies to possess such weapons, which would allow them to blackmail the world and impose their evil will. We will not let this happen. This did not happen to us, and we will not let it happen to others. The United States has the strongest military the world has ever seen. I rebuilt our armed forces during my first term. There has never been an armed force like the one we have, and honestly, no one even comes close. But now we are using this military for good. We want to use it for a good purpose. We are undertaking this large-scale operation not just to ensure the safety of our own time and place, but also for our children and their children. Just as our ancestors did for us many, many years ago, it is a duty, the burden of a free people. These actions are right and absolutely necessary to ensure that Americans never have to face a radical, bloodthirsty terrorist regime armed with nuclear weapons and numerous threats. For nearly 50 years, these vicious extremists have constantly attacked the United States, shouting the slogan, "Death to America," or "Death to Israel," and sometimes both at the same time. They are the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism. We are the greatest and most powerful nation on the planet, so we can and must do something in response to their actions. These unbearable threats will no longer continue. I once again call on the Revolutionary Guard, the Iranian military police, to lay down their arms and receive full immunity, or else face certain death. You will face certain death. It won't be easy. I call on all Iranian patriots who long for freedom to seize this moment, to be brave, to be bold, to be heroic, and to take back your country. America is with you. I made you a promise, and I kept that promise. Everything else will depend solely on you, but we will definitely be there to give you all the help you need. Thank you very much. May the Almighty bless our valiant and courageous warriors. And may the Almighty bless the United States of America as well. Thank you very much. Let's consider this a response to the words of Tucker Carlson.